have an awesome episode for you today. Imagine an engineer who in their career did the following. They built and sold 2 businesses, then they put their career on hold to help their ill parents, and while doing that, they write a book, an inspirational book to help other people. They run marathons. They get into a traumatic accident and then essentially have to learn daily bodily functions again just to be able to get back into their career, which they do, and then they build up their career and they get elected as president of one of the most prestigious engineering associations in the world. Well, that's the guest I have for you today. Marsia Geldert-Murphey is the 2023 President-Elect of the American Society of Civil Engineers. She is an amazing woman, and we're happy and thrilled to have her today on International Women in Engineering Day. Now, before I dive into my conversation with Marsia, I'd like to recognize our sponsor for today's episode, Colliers Engineering and Design. Colliers Engineering and Design is a multidisciplinary engineering firm with over 1,800 employees in 63 offices nationwide and growing fast. Colliers Engineering and Design maintains an internal culture that is nurtured through the promotion of integrity, collaboration, and socialization. Their employees enjoy hybrid work environments, continuous career advancement, health and wellness offerings, and programs and projects that have a positive impact on society. Colliers Engineering and Design stays on the cutting edge of technology, and their entrepreneurial approach to expansion provides personal and professional development opportunities across the firm. Leadership's dedication to the well-being of their employees and their families is demonstrated throughout the wide range of benefits and programs available to them. For more information, visit the career page on their website at colliersengineering.com. All right, now I'm excited to welcome on our guest to the podcast today. Marsia Geldert-Murphey is the ASCE 2023 President-Elect. I'm super excited to talk to her. Marsia, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thank you very much, Anthony. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
So I'm super excited to speak to you on a lot of levels. One, because I'm an ASCE member, a passionate ASCE member. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. And just your whole career and your journey has been what I see is really interesting. So I'm excited to dive into it. So let's start maybe, Marsia, just in your own words, maybe tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, about kind of what it is you do today on a daily basis in terms of kind of your day-to-day job. I know, believe it or not, ASCE presidents have their own jobs outside of ASCE, but they do.
You know, it's funny, you go in LinkedIn and you add this role and everybody says, congratulations on the promotion. It's like, well, I still have my day job. Yeah. But thank you. I guess I do have a little bit of an unusual journey. I am originally from South Dakota, and I came to the state of Illinois. I was hired by the Illinois Department of Transportation, worked on a fantastic cable stay bridge, eventually navigated my way to the consulting world, where I founded 2 businesses and ultimately sold them. And now I am sitting as the regional director for Lochmueller Group, which is a Midwestern general civil engineering firm, and I'm responsible for 2 states, Missouri and Illinois. And I always tell everyone I'm the chief cook and bottle washer, or I manage crowd control. But really, what my job is, and I think everyone understands this, there is no typical job, or typical day in my job, but I try to make sure that everyone in my region here is working at their highest and best efficiency. So my job is to make sure that they have all the tools that they need, that the resources that they have are adequate, and I'm listening to the needs on the operations side, personnel and technical development side. And so we just try to keep things running as well as possible. So it's interesting. I have 6 offices. People say, where's your office? They said, well, what day is it? Because I spend different days in different offices between the 2 states. So it's nice. It's interesting. I love working with the group of people that we have. And as with everyone in civil engineering consulting right now, we need more people. Labor shortage is a real issue in our industry. So that's also something that I focus on a daily basis, is trying to get more people on board.
Okay, great. That's interesting. And you know, as an entrepreneur myself, that was interesting to me that you started a few businesses and sold them. Did you find yourself always with kind of an entrepreneurial flair, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have that disease.
Yeah.
I do. I instantly, when you present me, even when clients present me with a challenge or an idea, the wheels start turning and I start thinking about, what could we do with that, or what new subsidiary or service could we provide to address that? I have to calm it down sometimes because I'm always thinking ahead like that.
That's great. Well, that even excites me more about having you as the ASCE president now. So, um, no, so that's great. So, you know, you were recently elected as the ASCE 2023 president-elect. So, you know, again, congratulations on that. That's really an amazing feat. So, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about your goals for ASCE in a few minutes. However, before we do that, you know, I want to talk a little bit of something more on the personal side about, I guess it was around 2016 or so, you were involved in a pretty serious elevator accident that kind of left you in a coma for more than a week. Talk a little bit about how that incident kind of changed your perspective on life, career, your ASCE journey. Just talk about, I'm sure that had a huge effect on you.
Wow, yeah, it did. It's funny, we kind of get into autopilot as driven. I'm definitely a type A personality, so I've got my North Star. I don't want anything in my way. I want to get to it. And this accident really stopped me cold in my tracks. And it was a blessing in several ways. One was that I had to shut down. I could not keep going. I had no choice. And so I've talked about I was asking in the hospital bed when I finally came out of the coma and had my wits about me, which took about 30 days. I was asking for my phone and my computer, and my family was telling me, no, you will not be getting any of that. You need to focus on healing and getting better. And, it's funny to look back and think how crazy that was, but I think that drive deep inside of me is the reason that I was able to come through my recovery and my rehabilitation as well as I did. I had to basically learn to do all the daily skills all over again. I had a pretty severe traumatic brain injury from the accident, and I had to go through cognitive therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. And really, what it taught me was to slow down, number one, appreciate that our career is not everything, that we have our family, that we have our well being, and we have other things that are more important in many ways than the career. And it really was an eye opener for me. I became very transparent. I had to. I had to share with people that as I was recovering, that I had some deficits, and that was humiliating at times and humbling for sure. And I just knew I had to work hard. I've told people about this in the past. My husband didn't even know where I was when I had the accident because I was constantly traveling on the move. I made sure that I thought that everything was okay when I left, but I wasn't being respectful and letting them know where I was. So now when I go somewhere, the first thing I do, I take a picture of the phone in the hotel room so my husband knows where I am, what room I'm in, where I'm staying, and I'm of course now much more proactive about letting my whole family know, hey, I'm going to be traveling, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be doing this. Um, and so that they're in the know. And likewise, I want to know, are there events and things coming up that I need to make sure that I'm blocking time for? And it's really made a difference in our family for sure. And the other thing is, I recognize everybody has some struggle. And sometimes it's not evident when you talk to people. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes with them. You don't know what struggles they're overcoming or issues that they have. I'm very, very mindful of that now. And I try to be aware, very aware, and listen more attentively than I did before.
That's a great really piece of advice. I mean, I know it's the silly old saying, don't assume you'll make an ass out of you and me, but I say that to my kids all the time when, they're looking at someone and saying, why can't that person do this or whatever the case may be? And,
Right.
you really don't understand what that person is dealing with on a regular basis. And really, that really goes into every level of life and even in your work. You're managing a team
Yes.
of people and someone on your team doesn't get their deadline done on time. And the first thing might be you want to jump down their throat, but at the end of the day, maybe they got something going on at home and maybe you should have a conversation with them, you know?
Well, and in addition to our work, for instance, I had to take public transportation growing up, so I was keenly aware of having to rely on bus, the bus for transportation and some of the challenges there. So one of the things we do at our company that I championed is I wanted everybody the last Friday of the month to use public transportation, carpool, or ride your bike to work so that they understand the user's experience. We design these routes, we work in light rail and public transportation. They need to understand what it takes. And it's interesting, some people came back and said, wow, I have to do 2 transfers to get to the office. I said, yeah. So that affects people's ability to show up for work on time if there are delays. So it even goes to that level of understanding and appreciating everyone's experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a really important aspect, I think, of being a leader in any capacity. So I want to just ask you another follow-up question on that because I myself, like you, I think I have that kind of entrepreneurial 150-mile-an-hour gene. And I think in a lot of ways it's good, but there are certainly ways where it can be, challenging because, you can burn yourself out, you can go too fast. And I found with building EMI here, it's good to surround yourself with people that, do like to take their time and are a little bit more detailed in things. Um, that being said, though, did you find that after your accident, you had to develop some new habits for yourself so that you did slow yourself down and you did pay attention to things that you didn't maybe in the past?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I'm keenly aware of my health and my well-being. I really focus on that much more now than I ever did before. And a lot of it is that I was told by medical professionals I had to. But I learned that it was just a much more pleasant way to live and a happier way to live when you can really take a step back and slow down. And like you, Anthony, I do partner myself with the people who are more detail oriented and they really get into the weeds, which before I would get frustrated with those people. I'd be like, don't worry about that. This is the North Star we're going after. Don't slow us down. And now I see those people as the greatest blessing I could have because they're going to see all of the pitfalls and some of the issues and challenges that I may gloss over because I'm moving so fast. So I've gotten very aware of really listening and thinking. Before, if someone had said, well, that's a great idea, but here's a potential, downfall, I'd get angry. I'd be like, how dare you, rain on my parade? And now I always thank them. Thank you very much. Thank you for calling me. Thank you for pointing that out. I want people to feel safe and welcome to tell me pitfalls, to tell me things they're concerned about. Let's get it vetted out early.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I just wanted to kind of shed a little light on that because I know from my own experience, it's certainly not an easy thing to do to be able to change some of those habits that you might have with yourself, whether you're someone who goes really fast or someone who goes really slow. I know for me, a lot of times people would say, just slow down. But just slow down is not that easy to do. So I
Right.
I know for me, about a couple of years ago, I was interviewing a woman on the show, and she was the CEO of a company, and she said to me, she did a lot of meditation practice to help, slowing down, and so she referred me to an app. I started doing it. It's been 3 or 4 years, and I've been doing it regularly, and I thank her for that. But I want people to know, number one, it isn't necessarily easy, but number two, it's also possible. And I think that that's if whatever you use to help yourself make changes with new habits in your life, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times having some kind of accountability partner, someone to help you, can be helpful
Yes.
for sure.
Yes. I meditate every day, and as a matter of fact, I did a brief meditation before I got on today because I had a series of meetings, and I thought, got to shift the mind. It was
Yeah.
in the crazy mind mode.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's And again, whatever that habit might be for those of you out there, it's good to find something that could break up your day. Like Marcy said, a lot of us are going fast right now in the civil engineering industry. Things are crazy, infrastructure's booming.
Yes,
There really isn't a company I talk to that doesn't say we can't hire enough people right now. So
exactly.
right, so that means we're all busy. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit, and certainly want everyone to keep that in mind. So let's switch gears a little bit now, and let's talk about ASCE. And for those of you out there that aren't aware of kind of the journey to an ASCE, a national president, I mean, it's really a big journey, and there's a lot that goes into it. And that means that whoever, obviously there's an election, but if you are elected, it certainly means that you've put a lot of time in with the organization, in which even another reason that I think Marcy's even more of an inspiration based on what she dealt with and came back from that. And she's still going to be leader of such a great organization. And so with that, Marcy, let's talk a little bit about your vision and goals. I know one of the things from my own experience doing a lot of association work with ASCE, I've been executive director of another association, a volunteer leader in a presidential position. You don't really have a lot of time in the realm of things, right? It's like a 1-year term. Obviously, you got the president-elect, and leading up to it. But it's kind of like by the time you get in and you get yourself settled, it's almost like, you're kind of like, oh, wow, I'm like a third of the way through or something. So kind of my question to you is, knowing that you don't have a lot of time, what are some of those big things that you really hope to impact? So at the end of the day, you could say, I was really happy that I focused on this and accomplished this.
Right. No, great question, because it is so true. It's like I always use this analogy with an organization like ASCE. It's like you're in a dinghy trying to redirect an aircraft carrier, right? And, and so a lot of people I do see come into these positions, and they do have great ideas, and I love them and I adore them for that. But sometimes I don't think they quite understand to change that trajectory of such a large entity is challenging. So from my perspective, really what I want to focus on is the future. I've been with ASCE since I was a student member. I've been with ASCE for 30 years. And it is the reason that I received the professional and technical development that I did along the way. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, in my immediate family. And so I didn't have a lot of the experience or mentors around me that helped me to understand what it meant to be in college and have this type of career. And so I got that from ASCE. That was my source. And they stayed with me through all the changes that I made geographically and, career-wise. And so I want to make sure that we do the same for our younger members and student members. That's going to be my focus, is making sure that we are reaching out to all the young people that are out there. And I believe, and I'm sure that statistics would support this, that the most reliable source of untapped STEM people out there are from unrepresented populations. And so they just don't know. They don't know of the opportunities that are here. And if they know about them, how in the world do they do it? And so I want us to focus on that. I want us to focus on students, and I want us to focus on younger members. And I've already started out by reaching out to various student leaders and younger member leaders throughout our organization, just getting their ideas on what they think is going to be best for them. I appreciate that this organization was made very, very strong by the elders who came before us. And I want to make sure that the organization continues to adapt and be strong for the generations who are coming after us. And so that really, I'm not shifting anything major. I'm just trying to infuse a more welcoming atmosphere at ASCE. And I think I can do that. I think I can welcome more members and make sure that everyone feels not only welcome to be a member of ASCE, but also that the members that we have are their full potential is being realized. And I know that that's out there.
No, that's wonderful. And I think, as a civil engineer myself, I practice as a civil engineer. I think it's one of those industries where, I mean, it's a great industry, and I think there's so many great things and exciting things about it now and going in the future. I mean, I tell people all the time, and I probably say this on every podcast episode, the listeners are probably getting sick of it, but there are probably going to be jobs in civil engineering tomorrow that don't exist today, right? There's all these
Exactly.
technologies, there's all kinds of things that's really exciting. But I think the challenge sometimes with civil engineering is sometimes more experienced leaders, if you will, have traditions and they're stuck in certain ways. And so for leaders like yourself to come in and say, hey, I need to get kind of the pulse of the next generation, understand what they want, understand what they need, and start to make them shifts in this organization to speak to that generation. I think that's really important. And honestly, I think an example of why I think this is possible is because before the COVID pandemic, I think 90% of civil engineering firm owners or executives would have told you there's no way we can operate at 100% remote, right?
Right?
And then March 2020, 95% of civil firms were 100% remote. So,
Exactly.
if we can do that, then we can certainly make other types of changes. So I think it's promising, and I think it's a great focus because that is the future. And I'm glad to hear that you really want to listen to that next generation and understand how we can kind of, it's a great organization as it is, but we can always upgrade it and change it and flex it to encompass, a wider range of members.
Exactly. And Future World Vision is another project that I am passionate about. When I was on the board, I voted for it, and there was concern about the cost. But I think as civil engineers, going back to what you said before about we've got wonderful, amazing, experienced leaders who have been in this field for a long time and have paved the way for us. And it's now time to let the new generation step up and take those leadership roles. And for some of them, it's hard to understand, not being, as I call them, digital natives, how important this tool is going to be starting in the college and utilizing that for planning and design and execution and getting all of the different professions together, working together as a team and collaborating instead of being siloed. The electrical engineers, the system engineers, the mechanical engineers, and the civil engineers, so that we are driving this change and are ahead of it than reacting to it. And I think that that's going to be an important initiative that we need to really stand behind.
That's great. No, I'm excited to, watch you as the ASC leader, and, I'll certainly reach out to you beyond this, but I would love to help in any way that I
Oh,
can.
wonderful.
All right, so switching gears a little bit here, you recently published a book. The book is entitled Cross, Yield or Burn, Navigating the Bridges of Life. Tell us what made you write that book. What's it about? What was the inspiration?
Well, I just had all this free time on my hands, so I thought, it's an interesting situation. So I was faced with, I was the owner of my first company that I founded. I had young children at home. Found out that my parents both were very ill and were still living back in South Dakota. I was here in Illinois. And so it was like all these things were happening all at once, where I had all these responsibilities and pulls on my time. And I think a lot of us right now are dealing with that. We're the sandwich generation, as they say, right? We've got kids, we've got a career, and we've got, in some cases, our parents that we're trying to be responsible for. And while I was taking time off and being with my dad as he was going through chemotherapy for his cancer, I needed to be in the room with him. I wasn't in the right frame of mind to work, so I started doing vignettes, just stories about this is what's happening today. It was a way for me to occupy my time, but I wasn't doing anything that I felt would jeopardize, my state of mind, so to speak. And so after going through all of that and having all these vignettes together, I started realizing a lot of people were reaching out to me, asking me, how are you doing this? How are you running a company? How are you taking care of your kids? You've also got family to take care of. How are you doing this? And so I thought, gosh, maybe this book would be helpful for other people. Maybe a book would be helpful for other people if I put all these stories together and made some sense out of it, sort of share the story. This isn't, my sister wrote the foreword and she said there's no pithy advice or, there isn't. It's not, gee, this is what you need to do at all. It's just the story of what I did to get through this time and how I realized that, you come up to certain bridges, as I call them, and sometimes people always say, well, don't burn a bridge. Sometimes you do need to. You know, if that bridge is toxic, if it's not helpful to your lifestyle or your well-being, you do need to burn that bridge. You know, being busy all the time, that's a bridge needs to be burned. Sometimes you have toxic relationships and you need to just let those go, you know, and move forward. And so I talk about that, and I talk about what I learned from the bridges that I did cross, the ones I needed to yield on a little bit through this whole process. And the important thing was that it was just a process of understanding the opportunities that were presenting themselves during a really awful, terrible struggle and painful, emotionally painful time in my life. And I just hope that it will help somebody who goes through this similar process to understand that you can get through it. And by the way, when all of this was going down, I was training for my very first marathon, which I ended up running, and I ran a few more after that before the accident. Um, and so it was all how all of that played into it too, into me getting through this. The running was really almost a medicine for me.
Wow. So were you ready? So you were writing those vignettes. This was before your accident.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, there's nothing about the accident in the book, which is funny because a lot of people, when they heard that I had published the book, they said, "Oh, did you write a book about the accident?" Well, the funny thing is, Anthony, I was I was I was out of it for at least 30 days after the accident. I have
Really?
no memory whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
I said, if we do a book about that, I'm going to have to rely on everybody else to help me write it because they're going to have to give me their impressions. I can write after the fact what I went through.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. And this book is available. People can find it online, or
Yes, I've got a website. It's called navigatingthebridgesoflife.com, and you can go on there and order the book.
okay, that's great. And we'll put that in the show notes as well for
Okay.
sure. So Marcy, we're publishing this episode on International Women in Engineering Day, and
Mm,
yeah, it's an important day. And this year's theme is gender equality today for sustainable tomorrow. Which aims to really recognize women who are working to build a more sustainable future. What would you say are some of the things that can be done to promote diversity and gender equality and to support women in the engineering world to kind of achieve their potential?
well, this is a great subject that's near and dear to my heart. I'm from South Dakota, and my family, my extended family, is in the Native American community. So I understand what it's like to be the subject, not just because I'm a woman, but also to be from a marginalized population, to be subject to implicit bias. And you know, what's really fascinating and interesting to me is that really good people, I mean, good people that I adore and I respect, are even unaware of their unconscious bias.
Mm,
And so it's challenging to be respectful and help them understand how these things drive us. And it's even something as simple as I was saying, not understanding if you've never had to use public transportation. It's just very simple things like that. You know, people immediately feel judged, like, oh, I'm a certain type of person because I believe this. And that's not it at all. It's the very subtle, insidious things that we are not aware of because we've had a different experience in our life. So I think the important thing when we're looking at expanding the diversity in our profession and certainly in our professional association is making people feel safe and welcome, letting them see people who look like them in positions of authority or leadership. That's what we really need to do. I saw this statistic last year, and it really astonished me that in the first 20 years after women get their engineering degree, most leave the profession. So what that means is there's a serious gap in the executive and C-suite level because we've lost this vast majority of our membership, you know, and our team for various reasons. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but the fact is that they're gone. 70% are gone in the first 20 years. And so that gap of diversity in our organization's leadership makes it even more difficult for people like myself who want to come in and sort of break that glass ceiling, if you will. And I certainly recognize some of the challenges there, but I do not give up because I understand that there are a whole group of women and marginalized people behind me that need to see people like me and a lot more people like me in these leadership roles and in these C-suites. That's number one, is just to be able to see people that look like you and understand that they respect some of the challenges that you've gone through. Number two is that we need to make sure that everyone recognizes this. We can't resort back to being defensive. We have to be open-minded. It goes to what we were talking about earlier, that we need to be open to everyone's experience and everyone's unique situations. And that doesn't mean that we're feeling sorry for someone. It doesn't mean that we're being ignorant to our own biases. It just means listen and be open and understand what everybody's dealing with, because we can't afford to lose the magnificent talent that's out there. We have to have them if we're going to solve some of these big challenges that we've got in our world right now. We need to have all of those best and brightest minds involved in the solution.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we talked about this a little bit earlier when you talked about getting out into some of these underrepresented communities and schools. And I think that's a big part of it. I mean, listen, I think every time, whether it's a woman like yourself gets into a leadership position like an ASCE president, I think that's always helpful and it can help us to build more momentum. But I think at the same time, if we want to really get to the root of the problem, it's getting out there to the youth, like you said, which is one of your goals, which is great, because at that point in time, they're open to anything, really, if we can get in front of them, because their minds are just like, just like a blank canvas in terms of their careers and what's ahead of them. So I'm excited that you're going to focus on the youth side of this as you get into your ASU career, because we do. I mean, my wife is a civil engineer, and I know a lot of women in civil engineering, but we still need to continue to try to help them grow and get into those positions and really grow confidence. And I think that's another thing. I think if there's a woman out there and she's a civil engineer and she sees you taking over as ASCE president, I have to imagine that would boost people's confidence to help them in their careers. And I think that that's a big part of it. So I think, everything that you're doing, I think everything that you're doing just from your own career standpoint and some of the goals you have is going to be excellent in terms of, helping to continue to elevate, women in the profession, which is a great thing. So with that, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and wrap things up by putting Marcy on the civil engineering hot seat. Before we dive into our hot seat segment, I'd like to recognize our other sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode. All right, we are back with Marsia Geldert-Murphey. Marcy is the ASCE 2023 President-Elect, among many other things, of course, in her career that she's talked to us about. All right, Marcy, now we're going to get to some of the fun stuff. We're going to put you on the civil engineering hot seat. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So do you have any specific rituals that you practice every day? Maybe it's a morning routine or a lunchtime routine, or just something that you do consistently on a daily basis that has contributed to your success?
Yes, I do have a morning routine that really sets the stage for my day. I meditate, and just a short meditation, usually 20, 30 minutes. And then I walk my pit bull, Sophie, and that's a great start for my day. And then when I return from our walk, my husband, Shane, always has a healthy smoothie made for me. And it just starts my day out great.
That's great. And you say a short 20, 30-minute meditation for someone that's been meditating for a bunch of years. I feel like that's pretty long. So that's great if you can accomplish that. If you're new to meditation, I would say start with 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But
Absolutely, that's what I started with.
um, all right, so I know you have your own book that you wrote, but what is a book that you might recommend? Maybe another book that you might recommend to an engineer, or
Mm.
any, it doesn't have to be engineering related, but any book that you may have found helpful to you in your career that really stands out. They're like, oh, that book was great for me.
So I recommend this book to all the mentees that I mentor, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And basically what it boils down to is, in its essence, is learning to ask what you need in a way that is not an emotional response. In a nutshell. So when I'm not being understood, I get very frustrated and I'm quick to have an emotional response. And reading Marshall's book has really helped me to understand how to ask what I need without getting into that emotional reaction.
That's great. Wow, that sounds like a powerful book, and I think one that I think could benefit a lot of people in the corporate world for sure. All right, and it looks like your cat may have joined us for the hot seat too. So, um, all right. So, next question here, Marcy. Thinking back on your managers of the past, if you think about some of your favorite managers or manager, and you don't have to name any names, but what made them your favorite? Just trying to understand some of the, great characteristics of leaders that you've dealt with or that you've worked for.
Well, this one manager, he's still a mentor to me today. And what I loved about him is that he really was quite an accomplished fiduciary, manager, and understood the money side of the business and understood the bottom line. However, and understood operations too. He was an operational genius. However, when he was working with me, he was more focused, at least that's what I felt, about my professional and technical development than he was about the bottom line. And
Mm.
to this day, I feel that way. And I watched him grow this company, and he retired at a fairly young age. And not only did he retire, he sold all his shares and he moved on because he had such a great succession plan in place. And I saw that. He did that with me, and he did it with everybody else who came along in the business. He was concerned about them, about us, and our professional development and our technical development. And he knew the byproduct of that was going to be a healthy bottom line. And I learned a lot from that. And like I said, I still rely on him. I still call him when I have challenges and I need an ear from an expert or a trusted advisor.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that a lot. In fact, a lot of engineering professionals that I talk to tell me that, they love when a manager is listening to them, listening to their goals, and wants to help them in their own career paths. It's unfortunate. I feel like a lot of managers or a lot of companies don't always think about that. They're thinking about the projects and the bottom line, but I feel like if you really take care of your team and help them grow, everyone's going to grow. The team's going to grow, the
Yes,
department's going to grow, the projects are going to be great, the company's going to grow. It's kind of like, sometimes we're just missing that really important step. So I'm glad that you shared that with us here today. That's great.
exactly.
All right, Marcy, I've got one final question for you. Let's say that you happen to meet up with a less experienced civil engineering professional and you only had about 30 or 40 seconds with that engineer to give them some piece of valuable career advice. What would that advice be?
Well, I had a really wise manager, another different one, tell me one time, nobody is going to know the circumstances under which you were dealing with when you were in this role. They will only look at what you did when they're looking back. So don't get caught up in this isn't going right or this is difficult or I have this challenge. Just do what you need to do and get it done. And in other words, he was telling me, look forward from today. If you look back, it's going to stunt your growth. And that's true. We have to learn from our experiences and we can, rely on that knowledge, but we cannot look back. We have to look forward.
That's great. Yeah, and you're right. People are going to look at the results and you need to be aware of that. And, that's something that is, really needs to be taught to people, because,
Absolutely.
we don't always think that way ourselves. But, well, Marcia, I want to thank you for spending some time with us here. I want to certainly wish you all the best in your ASCE presidency for sure. I'll definitely be, watching you, and I'm willing to help out. And it's been, I mean, listen, from, the story you told about your parents and writing the vignettes, which turned into a book, running marathons, your accident, how you overcame it, selling businesses, your journey to ASCE president. I mean, this sounds like a movie, not a podcast episode. There's so much that you've accomplished. I mean, you're really an inspiration to go through all of that, and now to be able to, lead ASCE, which is, obviously a leading civil engineering organization association. So thank you for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to your presidency, definitely.
Of course. Thank you, Anthony. And I look forward to you helping us.
For sure. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Marcia. She is an amazing woman. She's an inspiration, and I really look forward to seeing her excel as the ASCE National President. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis, so please be sure to subscribe here so you can get all of the info you need to take your career to the next level and become the best engineer, manager, and leader that you can be. I'll see you next week.